Maybe you clicked on this video because you think I'm a little crazy. Maybe you're expecting to learn about a real flying submarine. Or maybe you're just a bit curious. Submarines are awesome, and yes, I probably am a little crazy, but whatever the reason, I think I've got something for you. Welcome! I'm Almost a Doctor, and in today's video we're going to be looking at how submarines operate, but with a bit of out-of-the-box thinking. We'll be comparing how submarines move through the water to that of planes in the sky, so we can answer the question, do submarines fly? In order to even address this question though, we first need to look at how submarines operate. And to do so, we're going to look at how they change depth, submerge and surface. I've mentioned in a previous video that submarines don't sink. But what do I mean by that? Let's start with a submarine already underwater. In order to surface, air is blown through water-filled ballast tanks. This rises the submarine to the surface, and often this will be done after the submarine has actually approached the surface, so it comes up gently, like you can see here. However, if the submarine needs to surface in a hurry, then it can do what's known as an emergency surfacing, where the ballast tanks are blown quickly and the submarine comes rocketing to the surface. If this occurs, then the submarine can come flying out of the water like this. But this is not what I was thinking about when I was imagining flying submarines. Now we have a submarine sitting on the surface of the water. At this point, there are two forces acting in the vertical direction. The force due to gravity pulling the submarine down, and the buoyant force pushing the submarine up. The buoyant force arises from the amount of water displaced by the submarine. If the density of the submarine is less than that of the surrounding water, then the buoyant force will cancel out with the gravitational force and the submarine will stay on the surface, just like a boat. In fact, the early submarines of the World War I and II era were designed like boats to spend most of their time on the surface and only dive periodically to evade detection. In order to submerge, the surfacing process is reversed. Air is let out of and water is let into the previously mentioned ballast tanks. This increases the density of the submarine and shifts the balance of forces in favour of a downwards pull, allowing the submarine to slip below the waves. Once underwater, the submarine maintains a neutral buoyancy. This is where the density of the submarine is matched to the density of the water surrounding it. If the submarine wishes to change depths, then water is pumped in and out to ensure that that density is kept the same. It is now that we can start to address whether the submarine can be considered to fly. At this point, the submarine is relying on hydroplanes to direct the flow of water around it. Hydroplanes are small, slender, wing-like control surfaces. Submarines have at least one set, most commonly one fore and one aft, though still sometimes they can appear on the conning tower. In fact, the submarine changes depth by controlling the pitch of these hydroplanes to move the flow of water to push the submarine up or down. We're all familiar with how planes work, where they generate lift by controlling the flow of air around their wings. So, is the submarine doing the same thing with its hydroplanes? In a sense, no. The plane does not maintain neutral buoyancy. It uses its wings to generate lift, whereas in a sense, the submarine is already floating. Instead, the operation of the submarine is much closer to that of a zeppelin or a blimp. In fact, the operation of a blimp in the air is very similar to that of a submarine in the water. The blimp can even employ ballast in the form of water to help maintain its altitude. They also employ the use of flaps to help control ascent and descent by changing the flow of air around it as it moves. So, if you consider the blimp to be flying through the air, then I guess you can consider the submarine to be flying through the water. But I kind of did promise you an actual flying submarine. There is a commercial producer out there who makes personal submarines and describes his submarines as flying through the water. But I think we can do better. For this, let's go to the Soviet Union. During World War II, the USSR faced off against the might of the German war machine, and in doing so, entertained some pretty interesting ideas on how to get ahead. One of those ideas was a flying submarine that could fly over enemy minefields and dive to attack enemy ships. However, the project was canned before anything was put into production, due to, unsurprisingly, complications with actually making it work. But I think we can do a little bit better. The RFS-1 was a working prototype built by Donald V. Reed. This amazing little craft was built essentially in his garage, and in 1962 flew an outstanding 23 meters, and could dive to a depth of 3.5 meters. Yes, I know, not exactly the stuff of science fiction, but nonetheless an actual flying submersible. Hopefully, this video provided some food for your hungry curiosities, as well as an insight into the inner workings of my brain, for better or for worse. If you did find this video interesting, don't forget the usual like and subscribe. And if you have any suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comments. Remember, I'm almost a doctor, and until next time, be like a proton, stay positive.